I guess it all started with a visit to Agbayani village for a class spring break trip. It was here where I learned about the Manongs, who initiated the grape strikes and once lived there. I didn't even know there was Filipinos who were politically active back then. And the term Manong is a term of respect that means older brother. People usually use that term to refer to these older Filipino men that worked in the grape fields. These Manongs, because of anti-miscegenation laws, couldn't marry white women. And there weren't many Filipino women in the US then. So most of them lived lonely lives, far from home, and without their own family. When I told my parents about everything I learned there, they told me that my grandpa worked there. And I guess it was learning about my grandpa, seeing these faded photographs, that made me really want to preserve this history, because I felt like those faded photographs, it was just such a fragile piece of history that could just fade away and be forgotten. And I guess that's what really inspired me to take this journey to learn more about Filipino history. And it was through this journey that I met these really amazing people with these stories. Through their stories, I learned what it was like to labor in the fields.
I had a baby in 1956. I had one in 1954, 55, and 56. And I was working the fields, and I had a baby that died in my arms on the way to the hospital at 8 months. And no insurance to bury him, no nothing. And so I had an aunt who went around to the town, in their little town in Early Mart, asking for donations to bury the child. And when Caesar, when becoming a member of the association was a small, death benefit, my husband became a member.
The life of a field worker, I understand, and I know what they go through, and I know how early they get up in the morning.
Getting up very early in the morning.
My neighbors are Mexicans, and 4 o'clock in the morning, you could see their kitchen light go on, and they're making tortillas, and they're yelling at their husbands, and they're telling the kids, "Mijo, get ready. We're gonna take you down to your tia's house."
We pick up the kids, take them to the babysitter. My mother-in-law was our babysitter at one time.
Because they gotta take the kids somewhere, and the parents go to work. So this is all part of the life.
And just going out and working and coming late in the afternoon when we were doing the hourly, late in the afternoon, go back and do the cooking and all the things that we do.
And the Filipinos do the same thing. They would take the kids out to grandma's, and grandma would take care of the kids out in the field.
And the conditions in the fields, no bathroom, there were no toilets then.
In other words, if you need to ihi tae, you had to do it under the grapevine. You had to hide.
There's no bathroom paper. We'd get the leaves, pull out the leaves and wipe ourselves. The water was in one container with one can. Everybody would drink from the same cup.
Back then, if they wanted to work you, they'll work you. But now, if there's a certain temperature, you have to send the workers home, because people have died in the grape fields.
We're going to a little community called Vineland, and it is where the grapes of wrath actually occurred. You see this little house like that? For Filipinos, it would have been a palace.
In '65, when they struck, most of them had been living in the labor camps for 20, 25 years.
The Filipinos started a strike that would eventually lead to the formation of the United Farm Workers, but I feel like this part of history is usually forgotten.
If Larry Leong, Philip Cruz, and Pete Velasco, Ben Gines and Andy Mutan and all those guys, if they didn't go on strike, there would have been no Cesar Chavez.
He said what they decided to do at lunchtime, that morning, was to pick the best grapes of all the grapes and put them on the ground and cover them with leaves. And then at noon, walk off. which meant all those grapes were going to wilt, die. Well, the grower still didn't answer them, and then Larry said, you know, we need to go to Cesar Chavez's group, the National Farm Workers, and have them join us. We need to join each other.
Each person opened my eyes to a part of this history, making the conditions on the field and the events I learned about or read about come alive.
It was hard. It was a big sacrifice they all had to make to do this. And many of the Filipino brothers slept in cars or slept under the trees. They didn't have a place to stay.
The Agbayani village was built for the Filipino strikers because when the strike started, they had been thrown out of the camps.
It was beautiful to hear about how the village was built from the help and collaboration of volunteers, and just touching to see how it impacted their lives.
This is from the Agbayani village crew. We call ourselves the crew and volunteers. It says, to all the Manongs, your courage gave birth to a new movement for all field workers, the United Farm Workers Union. We came to help. Patiently, you helped us to grow. We came to build. Lovingly, you taught us strength and courage. Your spirit and conviction inspired us to struggle and to fight for fairness and equality. Our lives are changed forever. You became friends, brothers, mentors, and Manongs to all of us, and we are eternally grateful. That was a nice thought. Yeah, but it was true. They just made you feel that there's a nice way to live instead of everybody fighting all the time.
I wanted to learn more about the Manongs at Agbayani village, but most of them had already died. So I asked the people I talked to about their personal experiences with the Manongs.
Did you know the person?
Oh yeah. Yeah, I knew all of them. I knew them all.
Do you know their names?
Mariano Santiago. Little old man, tiny, skinny. He went to the clinic one day. That's where they received their medical care. And he told me that he was leaving the United States. He was going back to the Philippines. He said that he felt that it was time to go, that it was his time, that he was going to pass on. And so he wanted to be in the Philippines. Not too long after he arrived there, he passed on.
After hearing that story, it just grieved my heart to think that those Manongs had labored in the fields for so long, and just going on strike, sacrificing their own comforts to send money back at times, being lonely, not having a family, and just being so far from their family in the Philippines. I know, it just made me sad to think that they'd only go back just to die. This has been a very long process, beginning to end. What first started off as a spring break trip became this journey of discovering my own history as a Filipino American and meeting and learning about some amazing people along the way. I feel that through these stories and from my grandpa working in Delano for 2 years, this connection to this community and a sense of empowerment from the history of defiance